Turns out that even my boldest predictions of how good Elly De La Cruz could be this year were vastly underestimating him.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are a Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr. I am a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan that has turned an addiction to this team into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day, and I want to thank you for making time to listen to me talk some Reds with you. I encourage you, if you're listening, hit me up on X at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs, or if you're watching here on YouTube, jump down into the comments section and leave anything. Tell me how impressed you are with Elly De La Cruz, because, my God, he's amazing. We're going to get into that today here on today's Locked On Reds podcast. And by the way, if you're an everydayer of the show, thank you so much for being that. You are what makes this show go. And if you're not an everydayer, hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. On today's Locked On Reds podcast, I know who the next Red hitter to break out will be. I'll tell you later on in the show. The Phillies are going to be glad to leave Cincinnati for no other reason than to get away from Santiago Espinal. But most importantly, even my wildestly optimistically predictions for Elly De La Cruz are turning out to be an underestimation. Before we get into all of that, I wanted to tell you today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go. You can join me as well. You can download it free on the App Store or the Google Play Store. All right, hear me out on this. Elly De La Cruz can be a 10-WAR player. I said one of my bold predictions this year was that one Red would get to 6 wins above replacement. It's been a while since the Reds have had a position player amass 6 or more wins above replacement. And I thought, Elly could probably put it all together and be one of those guys. Maybe CES. But definitely Elly was my target on that. I didn't want to limit it to just him in case somebody else did because, well, it's a bold enough prediction as is based on how the Reds have been these last few years. But the way that he has started out, the way that Elly De La Cruz's 2024 season has begun, he is already to the point where he's about to match, so if you're looking at Fangraphs, he's about to match his WAR from last year. Now, he did end up playing like 90 games last year. It was no slouch. It wasn't a small sample size. And we only got the 1.8 WAR on Fangraphs. He's at 1.3, according to Fangraphs, wins above replacement. He's actually already surpassed his Baseball Reference wins above replacement. They have different formulas for it. I don't necessarily know the difference is there. It's lots of maths. But the point is, he has been so good so far this season that he has eclipsed anything he did last year. And that got me to thinking, because one of our favorite comparisons with all these rookies and all these guys that are coming into sophomore seasons or their second years or whatever you want to call them, our favorite comparison is a certain player who his first season, his first taste of the majors, he was okay. He wasn't all that great. And then he went nuts the next year, which was his first full season. We're going to do this. We're going to do a blind player test here. Blind resume test. That's what it is. Blind resumes. Love doing blind resumes. Player A, batting average of .313, on base of .412, and this is in 24 games. This is in the first 24 games of each of these players' seasons. So first 24 games, player A, batting average of .313, on-base percentage of .412, slugging percentage of .651, 7 homers, 15 stolen bases. Then you look at player B in his first 24 games, 312 batting average, slightly less than player A. On-base percentage of 377, less than player A. Slugging percentage 527, less than player A. Homers 4, less than player A. Stolen bases 6, less than player A. You might have guessed, because of what he did last night, and there was probably, lots of folks talking about the amazingness that was Elly De La Cruz getting 3 steals last night, getting up to 15 steals. Player A is Elly De La Cruz. I mean, after all, that's what this segment is about. Player B, 2012 Mike Trout. In his first 24 games of 2012, Mike Trout was not as good as the first 12 games of Elly De La Cruz this year. And now I know what I'm saying. And I know that you're probably like, oh my gosh, Jeff, why are you comparing Elly De La Cruz to Mike Trout? It's too early. How could you possibly dare to do such a thing? Because everything points to this being real. He's hitting the ball hard. And sure, his BABIP is high, but so is his speed. Elly De La Cruz's career batting average on balls in play will always be higher than the league average. He will never be a league average BABIP guy. But his quality of contact is there. The speed is there. The defense is coming along. He had some hiccups early on. And that's probably going to be the biggest thing, the biggest gap to can Elly become a 10 WAR player? Is how consistent will his defense get? I think it's going to be fine. Have you seen him make the plays that he makes? Running into the outfield, covering Spencer Steer's lack of range in the left field corner. He catches. There's hits in years past, and you watch them with Kyle Farmer at shortstop and Eugenio Suarez or Mike Moustakas at third base. There were these fly balls that would find no man's land and just drop. And then, of course, Jesse Winker in left field. Nobody could get to him. Elly De La Cruz almost overruns them because he can get to those balls. But he was so phenomenal in the win on Wednesday night. And I'm burying the lead a little bit. I understand this. We're going to get into the specifics of the game coming up here in a little bit. But this is all about Elly. Because I don't think it dawned on me late in the game. He was the 7th run. He was the final run that pushed the lead to 3, the final insurance run that the Reds got for the night. Because he singled, stole second, stole third, scored on a sac fly. He did that. Now the sac fly, obviously, and that was a nice long fly ball to get him in, but if it's anyone else, there's a really good chance they're not at third base because nobody else is Elly De La Cruz. The Reds have a super special player, a superhuman player. And if you've seen Dune 2, they've got their Lisan Al-Gaib. The Reds do. The Kwisatz Haderach, or whatever you want to say. Muad'Dib. It's Elly De La Cruz. He is the guy so far, and it's nice to see that the team is finally starting to hit around him because up to this point, he was the majority of this offense. He still has the crazy statistics. I'm monitoring this as the season goes along. He scores 56% of the time that he gets on base. That is a crazy stat. He now has raised his on-base percentage to .412. I said that in the graphic. His on-base percentage right now is Joey Votto-esque. And he is a far better athlete than Joey Votto ever was. Plus, he's got a walk percentage of 14%. Lots of people want to harp on his strikeout percentage, which he's actually brought down slightly. They want to harp on the strikeout percentage and say, oh, that's too high. He is walking almost 6% higher than league average. So yeah, he strikes out, but he gets on base a lot too. He is far better then we thought Elly De La Cruz could be a 10-WAR player. The Cincinnati Reds might have one of the 3 best players in this game. The Atlanta Braves, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the New York Yankees. Trying to think who else. Mike Trout. Don't tell me about the rest of the Angels, but Mike Trout. They all need to be put on notice because Elly's coming. And it's for real. You know, over the last 2 days, Santiago Espinal has exceeded all expectations. I'll tell you why coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Policygenius. Policygenius is the smarter way to buy insurance. Their proprietary technology makes it easy to compare personalized quotes and policies from top-rated insurers side by side. Policygenius team of licensed expert is here to answer questions, handle paperwork, and help you make decisions with confidence. They work for you, not for the insurance companies. From exploring coverage options to making policy adjustments as your life changes, Policygenius is your advocate at every step. And Policygenius is committed to your information remaining secure. Your security is their priority. They use industry-leading security practices to help keep your information safe. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB or click the link in the description of today's episode to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB. And you know what? We've all been there. Either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low. Not sure you can pull your team out into a win. Snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. That's when you dig deep. Lift your head up and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, take as much of my friend's cash as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches in the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress with your buddies. There's so much to do, like play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties, and you can do this all while also heisting their bank vaults as well. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and work with them in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb that leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume from all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel's app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast, going to see if we can get together with our Locked On Phillies buddy, Connor Thomas, and break down this season series, because today, depending on when you're listening to this, you may or may not be listening to this either during or after the game, but this is the final game of the Reds and the Phillies for 2024. The Reds were able to clinch a season series win last night. Last night was huge because it sets them up for a 3 out of 4, a chance for 3 out of 4 if they win today. But it guarantees that if at the end of the season, the Reds and the Phillies have the same record, the Reds are ahead because they got the tiebreaker. Huge game last night, and a huge reason why they won was Santiago Espinal. Huge game for him, 2 hits, 3 RBIs, had a sac fly. He had the huge game-tying 2 RBI single. This was at a point, too, where it was just like, man, it feels like the Phillies are really holding on to this. Spencer Turnbull was pitching pretty well to start the game. It felt like he had his breaking ball working, and he's a right-hander. So it's like, we're not even talking about a lefty here. But he was really working in and through the Reds lineup. So you're just hoping, you're like, man, get something going. Santiago Espinal was that guy. And I think that it's important, too, when we look at who Santiago Espinal is in relation to this roster. Because I think we've seen him a lot over the last week. There's been lots of, illness and players dealing with flu-like symptoms and being out because of sickness and things like that have conscripted him into what feels like everyday playing time. And so you're thinking, this guy, this is it? This guy who's hitting $120? I think he was down to $127 just 2 days ago. And then Tuesday happened and he got 3 hits. And then Wednesday happened and he got 2 more hits. And now he's back above 200. It's amazing to see how that works early on in the season. Whenever we're harping about guys having batting averages below 200 and, oh my goodness, how horrible this is. Let's even consider this. Santiago Espinal is here because the roster wasn't right. And it's not as if the roster wasn't right because of bad planning. The roster wasn't right because of injuries and because of suspension. Noelvi Marte, TJ Friedl, Matt McClain. We talked about it ad nauseum. Everydayers will know. The suspension of Marte. Friedl, good to hear that he's going to be starting a rehab assignment soon. Probably still out till about Memorial Day. And then Matt McClain's going to be out till August at the most optimistic. So they were already depleted with their depth. So if anyone else, for whatever reason, misses any amount of time, you're calling up Nick Gonzalez from AAA. You're calling up Mike Ford and having to make a 40-man roster move to do it. They did this. They traded for Santiago Espinal with minor league pitcher Chris McIlvaine to the Toronto Blue Jays so that they could have viable major league depth during a time when they went from being a team that had depth to being a team that has no depth whatsoever because of things that happened before opening day even got here. If Matt McClain and TJ Friedl are healthy, Santiago Espinal is still a Toronto Blue Jay. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he gets cut by them. I don't know what that situation was. But he's also a guy that coming into this season had a career batting average of 268. Nothing crazy. I'm not saying he was, a perennial all-star, though he did make an all-star team in 2021. But he's not yet turned 30. And he has a career batting average of 268. And he smashes lefties. Career batting average against left-handers of 299. He's never going to be a big bopper. His slugging, even against lefties, I think his slugging just touches 400. So we're not talking about a guy that's going to run a lineup, but he's going to play decent defense, and he's going to be a solid bat at the bottom of your order. And because he started off so slowly, everybody was just like, well, Nick Gonzalez has to be better than this, right? We got to have somebody down in AAA that's better than this. We don't. He's just going through a rough patch. It's really hard to tell, like in the month of April where you're all keyed up, you're ready for baseball season, and the Reds have so much hype around them and so many expectations that when a guy like this comes out and just does nothing, you're like, oh, well, he has no abilities then. And why is he even on the baseball field? Get somebody else out there. I'm really glad that the Reds didn't do that. And that is why fans don't run the ball team. Fans just complain about the ball team, right? I mean, where would we be if we couldn't complain about our favorite team? But Santiago Espinal has shown over these last 2 days why he's here. He is a catch lightning in a bottle type guy. He is a guy that if he goes off during a game, you better win that game. Because it's not going to happen all the time. Maybe he goes on a little bit of a hitting streak, but it might be one of those situations where they're almost all singles. Maybe there's a lot of those games where he only gets one hit, and he just kind of keeps the hitting streak alive just barely. But he's a guy that just be slightly above replacement level. That's all they need him to be. And that's all that they were trading for. They weren't Santiago Espinal. The fact that he was even available whenever Nick Kroll was able to trade for him is something short of a miracle. And now he has won them 2 games. I mean, not single-handedly, but he has been a huge reason why the Reds have now won this season series with the Philadelphia Phillies. Because he helped them. He was a huge factor in 2 straight wins at home against Philly. And he's put in some very admirable performances. And his goal, by the way, coming in here, was get us to when the roster's healthy. Right? Like, we always hate, we want to evaluate everybody on the field as though this is the guy that we're going to start the World Series with. That's not who Santiago Espinal is. He's just a guy that's going to bridge the gap. And he's shown why over the last couple of days. He's more than capable of doing that. All right. I know who the next breakout is. I'm going to tell you coming up next. Baseball season is going. It's raging on. So don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to Prize Picks today. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks. They're America's #1 fantasy sports app for lots of different reasons, but mostly because they offer huge payouts and you don't have to go crazy to get there. Because you can earn some serious cash with all your favorite baseball players. We're talking 100 times your money, serious cash, with as little as 4 correct picks on Prize Picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that. You can put together a list that includes, well, okay, you don't even have to really put together a huge long list. Just look at all the statistics that Elly De La Cruz has, hits, runs, RBIs, stolen bases, doubles, triples, whatever it is. Make a list of all of those. And you're probably going to make a winning Prize Picks list because Elly is insane. And you can take your cash and multiply it. See it multiply over on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, download the app and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Also, bookmark si.com/MLB/Reds for written content about your Cincinnati Reds. Had, some of those Santiago Espinal thoughts I'd written down prior to last night's game over there on si.com/MLB/Reds. And looking at, the great decision that David Bell had to bring in Fernando Cruz, which, by the way, another clutch appearance for Fernando Cruz in that game. David Bell, and I did not really want to go 2 episodes in a row having a segment about how smart David Bell was. Not to say that I'm not trying to give him credit, but I'm also not trying to sit here and sound like I'm some sort of shill for David Bell. I'm not. But he's had 2 really good days. His win on Wednesday, it felt like he wanted that game, man. He went out there and he got Nick Lodolo. Nick Lodolo pitched all right. Got Nick Lodolo, brought in Lucas Sims. He was shuffling some guys around. The pitcher that eventually was the pitcher of record for the Reds was Justin Wilson, who got 1 out. He got the Reds out of the 6th. And Fernando Cruz got the Reds out of a jam as well. That split finger, you can't hit it. I'm sorry. If you're a Major League Baseball player that is getting ready to play the Reds, and maybe you tuned into Locked On Reds to see what's going on in Cincinnati, maybe you can get a tip or 2. I'll give you a tip. Fernando Cruz is going to throw you a splitter, and you're not going to hit it because it's the best pitch in baseball. Absolutely fantastic what that dude can do on the mound. I don't know. I think I'm being converted into a Fernando Cruz truther that believes that he's the best relief pitcher on this team. That could be the case. But I digress. That was a fantastically managed game by David Bell. And actually I saw and I'm trying to think of the website that I read it on. It was one of the blogs about the Phillies, but they were talking about how their manager bungled the game. And I'm like, yeah, I think David Bell actually kind of outmanaged the crap out of him in that game. That was good to see. All right, let's do this before we get out of here. The next breakout. Get ready. Maybe get them on your wait list for Prize Picks. Not wait list, but like your watch list, so you can add them into your Prize Picks entries. Get ready on the prop bets with this guy. Which, by the way, FanDuel, and this is kind of a point to why I'm picking this player to break out, they still have him pretty high up on the list to do stuff. I'm talking about Christian Encarnacion Strand. He's headed for a breakout. And the biggest thing for me is that all season long we've had one question. He had one walk heading into Wednesday. And we're like, are you just not seeing the ball well? Like there's a lot of instances where you can close your eyes and you can picture a CES at bat. Okay, well, maybe not. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just insane. But you could close your eyes and see it, and he's swinging at a pitch that bounced in front of him. He's a very, very aggressive swinger. Not saying that that's changed at all. He loves to swing at pitches that come plateward. But he had 2 walks on Wednesday night. I think that is a sign that he is ready, and he is seeing the ball well. And he's ready to break out. He's been hitting the ball hard all season. He's just kind of been a little bit unlucky about where he's hit it. His batting average on balls in play are pretty low, but his average exit velocity is 90.9. That's above league average, close to where Elly is. Over 91 is where Elly is. His expected batting average, according to Baseball Savant, is 268, which is far better than what he's got right now. And his expected slugging percentage is .523. Which is right where we want him to be. And I mentioned this just a moment ago, but FanDuel still has him. Like if you go into a given game, if you look at today's game of the Reds and the Phillies, and you look at the prop bets, and you see, okay, let's look at the players, pick a player to hit a homer at any time during the game. CES is usually the guy for the Reds that has the shortest odds to hit a home run. Still. Even though Elly's hit more to this point, because they know there's talent there. CES can still be one of the best hitters on this team. Many picked him to be that way. He still has a chance to do that. And I believe the breakout is coming soon here. Because I've not seen anything. I mean, because you're going to say, but Jeff, his batting average is horrible. His on-base percentage is horrible right now. Everything else, the underlying stuff, the peripheral stuff, the analytics, whatever you want to call it, it's all pointing to a breakout. I'm not saying that it's happened. I'm saying it's going to happen. So get ready for it. Maybe you make some cash on him. I don't know. Check him out for your prop bet soon because a breakout is coming. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode with me flying solo. Steve will be back tomorrow. His work schedule has been kind of haywire for him these last couple of days. As he said, he's going to be traveling out to Arlington, Dallas, whatever, for the Reds and the Rangers this weekend. So he will be there, and in order to do that, he had to work some crazy hours these last couple of days. But I appreciate you hanging on with me solo these past 2 days. Coming up on the next podcast, he's going to be back, and we might be able to be talking to Connor Thomas from Locked On Phillies and kind of do a little bit of a debrief of this series. So you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed on your favorite podcast app and right here on YouTube. That way you don't miss anything that we've got coming for you. Make sure that you've clicked the bell to get notified whenever we've got new content coming, because we are going to be here every single day, all throughout the season. Win or lose, good trades, bad trades, good David Bell decisions, bad David Bell decisions, and we're going to be here for every single win above replacement that Elly De La Cruz accrues. Say that 5 times fast, because there's going to be a lot of them, because we are Locked On Reds every single day.